The sheer demand I have had after buying this PC off eBay. This was the £3 PC that we got. It came with a fun story about someone's divorce. Ultimately, it was a pile of garbage. But the amount of people that wanted to see this get upgraded, well, you know what? It's been a long time since we've done it. But with everything going up through the roof, RAM, graphics cards, storage, I thought, you know what? Why don't we still see if you can build a £10 gaming PC? We're talking something that can actually game. And with the way prices are going at the moment, what better place to start than with an SFF PC that hardly runs with integrated graphics that ran Windows XP. So I've got together a load of parts. I've got everything we could need. We've got graphics cards, RAM, storage, processors, different things to try that I've nabbed for cheap across the December period, all before they could go up in price. And we're going to try bit by bit to see what will transform this into a gaming PC. Step one, let's plug it in, make sure it still works. Just see what we can do with this. This is the Christmas special this year, because it's got to be, doesn't it? I hope I've still got my VGA cable somewhere. If anyone's wondering what the trailing cable is, I finally had a business line installed. We have internet that's actually, well, it's bad, but it's not as bad. And as I'm saying that, the computer is just turned on. We need a monitor, very important. Nothing better than the factory HP for a gaming setup. Now, we didn't have much wiggle room on price, but we're aiming for £10 total. And that's to try and make this thing go from garbage to gaming machine. I don't know how well LGA 775 gaming machines are doing, but we're answering a lot of questions today. Okay, still works. F1 to continue. We left it running Linux. I didn't think we'd ever be using it again, but people just loved this machine, the story, I think the nostalgia of these awful optiplexes. Step one, we had very little in the way of RAM. So RAM is going to be our challenge number one. So they don't call me the RAM King for nothing, because my local CEX had one of these. Bask in its glory, because I think the days of 25p RAM sticks are long over. But upgrade one to see if it'll run its true 4 gigs of RAM. So this is a 2 gig stick of RAM, which brings us up to a total of 4 gigs. Now it does have a spare RAM slot down here. So why don't we take our extra 2 gigs of memory. Turns out DDR2 has not gone up in price yet. DDR3's gone up in price, DDR4's gone up in price. Virtually everything's gone up in price. It's not clipping in. Right, let's start hacking away and removing parts. Other side's in. Good. RAM is in. Right. 4 gigs of RAM. Quick test. Right, can we get into the BIOS? Yes, it does work. 4 gigs in dual channel. That works. Okay, 4 gigs in dual channel. But can we go further than that? 4 gigs isn't very much in the modern day. So what have we got on hand? What have we got over here? Now, this one I'm not too hopeful for. For 25p a stick, you can also get 4 gigs of RAM. Now, LGA 775, especially on the Intel side, does not like 4 gigabyte sticks of DDR2. Mostly because this stuff looks like it's come out of a server, and a lot of the time it is server RAM. I mean, at the same time, this puts our upgrade costs from 25p up to 50p for 2 of these. Wait, are these not DDR2? What are these? Are these DDR3 sticks? Yeah. Well, I got 25p sticks of DDR3 RAM, which isn't what I wanted. Well, our second upgrade's failed. They've sold me RAM that's too good because it's not actually DDR2, it's DDR3. Well, that RAM was a bad idea. Have I got anything spare? I have no DDR2 sticks, at least none that are 4 gigabytes in capacity, which is why I bought those ones. I guess we're running 4 gigs of RAM today. I can just hear the hard drive that is still mostly dead. It's doing something of some capacity. So we know it boots with 4 gigs of RAM. We know it's reporting 4 gigs of RAM. Can we run a quad-core processor on here? So somewhere underneath this giant plastic cooler, which I think is designed to cool about 45 watts, that's a good screw position down there. Can it lever back? It can! There's dirt that is stuck. Okay, there's not much thermal paste left on this Pentium dual core. I've picked up a selection of processors. Now, this one was £1.25, this one was £1.25, and this one was 20p. Our worst case scenario, I've got a Core 2 Duo E8500, which was pretty good for 20p. Our best case scenario is an Intel Core 2 Quad Q9300 for £1.25, and our, well, if nothing else works, please do work, is a Core 2 Quad Q6600, also for £1.25. So ideally we want to start with this one and see if it actually boots or gives us some sort of signal. I really hope it just straight up works with this processor. It's there. Yes. Angry noises. Core 2 quad. It does! It works! Processor info. Core 2 quad Q9300. Okay, it's limited it to 2 gigahertz. I mean, it's lost 500 megahertz by being in this PC, and the fan is going insane trying to cool it already. When we're in this section of the market, all we need the computer to do is work. People asked for this, by the way. You all asked me to do cheap upgrades on this. So what does that bring our running total up to? We were £3 for the PC, 25p on the RAM, £1.25 on the processor. That brings us to a running total to £4.50. So we've got about £5.50 left in wiggle room. The fans are so unhappy. If I do remember future me as editing, please make sure that I put an unedited clip of the sound in so people can hear just how loud it is, because this is it at idle. Extra, it is already a faster experience. Okay, yes, let's take a look. Intel Core 2 Quad Q9300. It has limited the clock speed because of the chipsets. I'm happy with that. We're going to call that we're going to call that a good base to work with. We have got more bits to upgrade in this system. And I don't care if it's loud. I don't care if it's running hot. £10, we're going to be gaming. So our second to last upgrade, a 30GB unbranded SSD courtesy of CEX for 50p. It's just listed as generic SSD 30GB. Use this as our boot drive, keep the hard drive in there as storage for games. That's the idea here, so we can keep the slow dying internal storage for games and boot off this. Power, data. Just tuck that down there. There we go. Now, we have an SSD. So why don't we see if it will install Windows 11. I just want to get modern Windows on here, because at the end of the day, we're using this as a gaming PC, aren't we? So we've got our Core 2 quad in there, they'll do with it fine. We've got our 4 gigs of RAM, but there is a little bit of thinking behind this if this actually installs. See, Windows 11 does actually have exceptionally good RAM management. One of the advantages that Windows 11 does have is that when you strip out all the bloat using the cut-down IoT version, you can use that RAM management with a cut-down, lightweight operating system. It won't ever be as good as Windows 7 was. It's one of the few advantages Windows 11 does have. It doesn't have many, but when it's stripped down far enough, RAM management and actually applying it to applications that need it and stopping services as they need to be stopped is something it can do. Now, I think this version is still supported by Microsoft, so our gaming PC does actually run. We'll delete everything for now. Everything can be deleted. We want nothing on here. Well, this is a bit of a development. So part of me thinks they've made another mistake. This is actually a 240GB SSD. They've just sold it wrong because I'm guessing they've just plugged it into a computer to see what storage it is, saw 30GB pop up, and went, 30GB SSD, we'll give you 10p for it. Second CEX mistake of the day. Hey, and I'm not complaining about that. That is, maybe this is part of the problem. So this SSD might be a fake one. Don't really trust that SSD. No, actually, I do trust this SSD. This is a gaming computer, Christmas gaming special. Nothing but the best in terms of overheating Core 2 quad, cheap, basic nastiness, random SSD, sketchy RAM, the wrong RAM. Everything's going so well. Dell gaming PC. See? It forgot to do the first screen. It's so quick. 5-year warranties on these parts, by the way. So when people say, oh, you're taking a risk on these cheap computers, you know, spending so much, £10 of your budget. You know, I've got a warranty on these. I've got eBay buyer's protection on this beautiful base machine. I've got a 5-year warranty on my SSD that's unbranded. I've got a 5-year warranty on the RAM that's wrong. A 5-year warranty on the RAM that was right. I got a 5-year warranty on the processor that's running at 100 degrees. I've got a 5-year warranty on the processors I didn't even need to use today. This Core 2 quad I bought, I know it was cheap. It has taken a beating in its life. 70% of our RAM still left, maximum speed of 2 GHz that we can't change because the BIOS doesn't really support this. We've got Windows on here, we've got our SSD in here, we've got plenty of RAM. It's actually usable speeds at the moment. Okay, the temperatures are fine, it's running at 50 degrees. I think the system just wants to keep itself bang on 50 degrees. Did it crash? I don't know. The screen's gone. My keyboard's still working. Maybe it's installed Intel GMA drivers? We don't really need Intel GMA drivers, but I think it's killed the computer. No, it's back in 1080p. Hopefully it's not downloading the update that renders the Core 2 Quad no longer supported. See, aren't we just answering so many questions today? We're covering the budget side of things, we're covering Sketchy component side of things, we're covering Core 2 Quad running Windows 11. Like, is this not just a Christmas bumperload special? All of your favourite things included, including the next upgrade. How do we install a graphics card in here? Hold. Oh, and hopefully that doesn't saturate our full PCIe 1 bandwidth. And now we can use a digital signal. Yay! But that does bring our running total up to £10. So why don't we take this this rather low quality CMOS battery out. It's also gone somewhere, but I don't really care where it has gone. So, new PIFCO battery. This thing usually runs at 100 degrees itself. That was the main issue. Is, for those people that don't know, the R7 is a rebrand of a rebrand of a rebrand of a rebrand that they've then ended up overclocking more and putting the world's smallest cooler on. They also did give it 4 gigs of VRAM, which isn't too bad. For how little we've spent, it is actually working remarkably quickly. I am going to stop Windows Update services because it's never going to be able to update past this version. I think that's where it's going wrong, is it sort of knows it can't run anything better than this. Right, what do we got here? Intel Core 2 Quad Q9300. Multiplier is at 6. It should go up to 7.5, apparently. So it started off as a 7750, then became the R7250, then became the R7350, then became... No, it became the R9255, and then it became the R7350, and then it became the R9355M or something like that, and then got brought back to PC with more memory as the R7450. It's amazing that AMD didn't rebrand this chip anymore, but to be fair, there's a reason they were so good, because they just kept chugging on as they are now. Okay, I don't think it's gonna let us change much. I hope we get the Steam hardware survey, because this is a real gaming PC. This is what everyone uses. What is this? Oh, that's DirectX is installing now. That's good. We need DirectX. The moment of truth is now here. The computer's built, the money has been spent. R7 450, Core 2 Quad Q9300, Sketchy SSD, 4 gigs of RAM. It's time to find out what it actually does. Come on, Still Nomad. Come on. It's taken all day. Oh yeah, now that's gaming performance. You know when we haven't run this benchmark before? Because we've never had a real gaming PC to test it with. It makes so much sense, doesn't it? Why would we have tested this modern, marvelous looking benchmark when we wouldn't need to? We've not had the hardware. We've not had the need. Now we do. Now we can be amazed at how good this PowerPoint looks. Drum roll, please. The figures are in. Legendary. Legendary computer. There you go. Legendary setup. Haven't touched overclocking. Haven't touched a thing. It is purely that good of a system. Legendary gaming computer. Honestly, well done everyone. It's been a challenge to get here. But it's built, it's done, and it is ready for benchmarking. The £10 gaming PC. You see that? See that grey unbranded blob that I've just plugged in? You know, see where the DVD drive is?
Down there, yeah.
That's the SSD I bought.
What the f is that?
Unbranded. Oh, frame rate gaming. Gaming time.
It's
This thing can only run at 80%. The other 20%, it doesn't know it's there. It caps itself at 80. It goes up to 80. Flatlines. The other 500, the computer has no way of knowing how to use it, so it just doesn't. So yes, we have managed to build a gaming computer for £10. So just to recap over the costs, our base system cost us £3, and that was a Dell Optiplex 330 that was from someone's divorce. We've then managed to upgrade the RAM to 4GB by including a 2GB stick that cost us 25p. The new processor cost us £1.25, our storage cost us around 50p, and our graphics card cost us £5, bringing us to a total, if you are really fussy about it and want to include the cost of the new CMOS battery I put in, well, it's from a brand called PIFCO, which is sold at a chain here in the UK called Home Bargains. They sell a pack of 6 for 50p, so really it is something you can ignore. But at the same time, let's go over those upgrades a little bit. RAM-wise, going up to 4GB does not only give us a higher quantity of RAM available, it means we can now run in dual channel, which is actually, when you're on something as limiting as DDR2, quite a huge advantage. Now, we're no longer using the iGPU, but last week when was it last week or a couple of weeks ago now, when we were actually using this system, that would have been a godsend, but still, better late than never. Our storage is actually quite improved by going from a dying hard drive to a probably dying SSD that's generic and does throw up errors from time to time and forgets where certain components of Windows exist. I mean, Steam does reinstall itself every time you go to use Steam because it's lost some of the files for it. These are just part and parcel of the things when you're building a cheap PC. I want Steam to reinstall itself because that reminds me that maybe I need to reflect on what game I'm going to play, because if I pick something I don't like, I then have to relaunch Steam every time and reinstall it. So it makes you think. It's got a gaming aspect to it that you just wouldn't get on standard computers. But seriously though, even a dying SSD is much faster than a dying hard drive. We now boot to Windows in about 10 to 15 seconds, as opposed to, I mean, when this was running Windows 10 last time, it was taking up to 10 minutes sometimes to actually get to a home screen you could use. So, as much as it's a bad idea, it is working. But the other big upgrades we've made are of course to the processor and the graphics card. Now the processor, we've gone with an Intel Core 2 Quad Q9300 that I didn't think was actually going to work in the system, as most forums online and most places say this is entirely unsupported in the system. And even my experience so far has shown me that yes, it is completely unsupported, with the BIOS not actually understanding what multipliers to use and forcing fan speeds that can't be turned down from 100%, so the system is continuously noisy. We also do lose out on a solid 20% of the processor's performance, which isn't great, and there's probably some other issues going on as well. I think later revisions of the BIOS on this motherboard, from what I found online, did actually remove support for this generation of Core 2 Quad because of the amount of issues there. Now remember, these are primarily OEM PCs that are wanted for stability, so yeah, it makes sense to get rid of it. But fortunately for us, the fact this PC has never been updated at all and is left with its original 2007 BIOS means that it does work. So yes, we have problems, yes it's not running great, but we now have 4 cores that are able to run at up to 2 GHz, should be higher but we can't change that, and it is quite a monumental step up in performance over the old Pentium dual core that was in here. Now, the graphics card does make up the rest of our budget, costing us £5, and it's something that we did get in a previous video. I really should have mentioned that during the live part, but I'm fairly sure what people that have watched this channel have probably seen that video and saw me get a cheap Radeon for a £5. I wasn't originally going to use this card, but at the end of the day, I came across it and thought, you know what, we've got £5 left in our budget, so why don't we use it? I mean, it's got as much VRAM as we have system RAM for the PC, it's got plenty of power, it's just very limited in a system like this. And what exactly do I mean when I say limited? Is it limited by the RAM? Is it limited by the processor? Well, no, not really. There's something else that is more limiting to this graphics card. So what exactly do I mean when I'm saying there's something else limiting this graphics card? Well, I did touch on it briefly, but this PC has a PCI Express 1.1 slot, which doesn't exactly give plenty of bandwidth. And most people are probably thinking, oh, but that's a low-end rebranded AMD display adapter that was never meant for gaming, but can do a bit of gaming to be fair. It surely shouldn't be saturating that. Well, yes. Yes, it really is. See, I went through and tried to do a little bit of overclocking, and I'll throw up the 3D Mark scores on screen, and even completely stock, this graphics card is just so limited that by overclocking, you make things worse. You're trying to shoehorn in even more performance that the computer just can't deal with. So yeah, if you wanted to know how PCI Express 1.1's holding up, really, really badly. But still, that didn't deter me. I did try and do as much tweaking around as I could to eke out any additional performance I could from the graphics card. It's so weird using a setup like this. A PCI Express 1.1 setup, we've got limited RAM, we've got a limited processor, yet all of it is more limited by the PCI Express lanes. I don't even really have the words for it. But still, at the end of the day, we do have a graphics card in the system, just there's no point actually trying to do any overclocking or tweaking. I mean, I did a bit of tweaking, but it's purely for stability's sake rather than performance. So yeah, PCI Express 1.1, that just means you're the original gamer, the original generation of PCI Express gaming. You took the first version, PCI Express 1, and you've gone to PCI Express 1.1, which means that you've got the improved version of the original form of gaming. So we had a tight budget, we had a bad base to begin with, and yes, you probably could do better than this, but at the end of the day, we have got things all set up and working. Now, the system does have quirks, it does have limitations, but at the end of the day, it does support up to DirectX 12, it has 4 cores, it has 4 gigs of RAM, and it is running Windows 11, a version that is still supported, mind you. So according to Microsoft, this computer is A-OK to be running Windows 11. Well, technically I did have to move a few limitations around and get rid of a few things, but still, at the end of the day, it is running it fine. In the desktop experience, I can't really argue with it. It's quick enough to use around the desktop. But in gaming, well, that's what we built this machine for, and it took me probably around 7-8 hours to benchmark this entire PC. I was pretty much going on till 11 o'clock at night to make sure we got some results. So up for you next, in this Christmas special, is... I have no words. I'm struggling for words, but they are the benchmarks. Starting things off here nice and basic, we have Half-Life 2, which we're running with very high settings in 1080p. Now, for the sake of stability from both our PCIe lane and our limited processor, I have used MSI Afterburner externally to cap frame rates where possible, if the game benefits at all. So for Half-Life 2 we had a 60 FPS cap in place, which meant that our frame times for the most part weren't too bad. As the game progressed and time went on, the game would stabilise and would eventually become smoother than it was when you started off, but overall we went from the game being a techno mess on the integrated graphics with the latest release, or hardly playable at all with its original release on the original system, to something that is now actually pretty decent. I mean, at the end of the day, Half-Life 2 is not a difficult game to run, especially with lower settings, but here, even with the limited PCIe bandwidth we had available, we were able to hit nearly a fluent 60 FPS in places, with the game actually having some effects turned on. I say some, we had all of the effects turned on because I genuinely did believe we could start things off with very high settings all round. So starting things off with Half-Life 2, a pretty good experience. Unfortunately, there's no way to launch Counter-Strike 2 on a Core 2 quad processor. Not that I think it'd do very well with these sets of specifications, because even if the processor could manage even just 30 FPS, that PCI Express lane trying to deal with the data of a game like Counter-Strike 2 didn't fill me with confidence. But at the end of the day, we lack SSE 4.2 or some newer version that we don't have on this Core 2 quad, so the game won't launch. At the end of the day though, we settled with Counter-Strike Source, which did have an odd green tint to it in certain servers for some reason. Doesn't matter, adds to the aesthetic. You know, green's a gamer colour, that's a real gamer experience right there. The game defaulted to medium and high settings in 1080p, and we saw 153 FPS on average, with 1% lows down to 134 FPS. So not that I'm too sure how much people are playing. Actually, you say people aren't playing Counter-Strike Source, it is consistently in the top 100 played daily games. So there you go, Counter-Strike Source, one of the top 100 most played games on Steam, runs fine on our £10 gaming PC. You know what else is a popular game and one of the most popular and most requested benchmarks on the channel? BeamNG, where we have it running here with a mixture of low and a few medium settings enabled in 1080p. Now, larger maps would crash the game, but some of these simpler ones were playable, so you could enjoy a little bit of the game, and despite the fact there were numerous warnings telling us that, well, apparently our processor was fine and so was our graphics card, but it did notice that our RAM was limiting. But still, once we actually managed to get in game and things stabilised, BeamNG was playable with a capped 30 FPS frame rate. 1% lows were pretty decent once the game was stabilised, but could occasionally dip down to the mid-20s. At the end of the day, BeamNG is quite an intensive game, but one that is also quite well optimised as well. So it was nice to see our £10 gaming PC can not only manage a full HD resolution, but it can also manage pretty decent settings as well. So there we have it, BeamNG is playable, and actually ran better than expected. The thing is though, can a system like this handle GTA 5? This is the type of PC people used to build back in the day to play something like this game. And well, with the advent of more intensive operating systems, it does pain me to say that even a Windows 11 cut down this much, even with its RAM management, does use more resources than I'd like. We saw that the game is, well, not really playable, and I don't think it was too much the RAM that was to blame here. I genuinely believe it was that PCI Express lane, because we know the processor can manage this game, we know that Windows 11 on 4GB can manage this game, we know the graphics card can manage this game really well. So the only real limiting factor is trying to cram all the bandwidth for this game through our PCI Express 1.1 port. The game was controllable, I'll give it credit there, and back in the day, for £10, some people would actually consider this a playable experience, because at least you're not having to play without the shadows off. At the end of the day though, this was pretty much the best I could get the game to run. Turning off shadows, turning off reflections, turning off things like that simply didn't bring any increase to our frame rate. I did try the game with PAL settings as well, as in capping the frame rate at 25 FPS, and it did help the game's stability a bit more, and definitely did help with response times from the mouse and keyboard. So I suppose you could get away with playing GTA 5, I just probably wouldn't recommend it. But can it handle GTA Online any better? Well, I managed to find a decently well-populated lobby, and no, not really at all. It's still controllable, even though the game is mostly running at 16 FPS, and large explosions or any action or most interactions, or in fact doing virtually anything, would cause the game to hitch up for a moment, which I wasn't too sure if that was an advantage for us or anything else. At the end of the day, GTA Online is rather questionable at the best of times, and when you start running it on questionable hardware like this, then, you know what, it wasn't great. I did actually manage to play through a decent chunk of it. I managed to actually get involved in some drama that was going online on the server I was in, and it was controllable. So, you know what, 16 FPS, if you're a real gamer on your real gaming PC, you'd say that's good enough, and you'd just make do, like I did for the last however long this benchmark took me to do. But here's a good one for you, the incredibly popular Mount & Blade Bannerlord. Now, on the original system, before we did any upgrades, it couldn't really run the game well whatsoever and would duplicate the shield texture into the skybox. But here with Bannerlord, after our upgrades, that wasn't a problem whatsoever. Even with low settings, once the game had stabilised, we could get a solidly locked 30 FPS experience with 1% lows down to 21 FPS. And I did originally start this benchmark with a small custom battle scenario, which I usually do on cheaper hardware, or because we're real gamers that only use the custom modes and not the actual built-in benchmarks. But once we got into it, and it was running so well, I mean, I couldn't really tell who's my enemy or not, that was besides the point, you just meant to know these things. I tried running it through the full-fat Bannerlord benchmark, and it ran! It genuinely did run pretty good. I mean, there were hitches and stutters, which would disappear once you'd reran the benchmark a couple of times and the computer had got used to it, I suppose. But yeah, if you ever wondered if this game was the pinnacle optimization, £10 gaming PC, and it is actually a playable experience for most of the early through to the mid-game, and honestly, even some of the late-game size battles. You know what game likes weird computers though? Fallout 4, and I thought maybe there's a chance that one of Bethesda's finest in optimization would run okay here. Well, it turns out, regardless of the settings we used, medium and high settings actually proved a smoother experience than lower settings, it is still pretty much completely unplayable. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's controllable, but whether or not you can deal with the PowerPoint-like frames in certain parts of the game, that's up to you. At the end of the day, Fallout 4 is a very bandwidth-intensive game, and unfortunately proved too much for our £10 gaming computer. It was similar to GTA 5 in a sense, but with a few more hitches and stutters. One of my personal favourite games with RimWorld version 1.6, which is running here with all of the DLC installed, which does actually put a bit more load onto the system. We ran the game with the default settings in our native 1080p resolution, and got an average of 41 FPS with 1% lows down to 33 FPS. Now once again, this game isn't really about frame rate, it's about the game's internal tick rate. and it could deal with it okay, better than I was expecting. This game has actually received some degree of multi-threaded optimizations with the version 1.6 update, and it does mean that Core 2 quad performance finally surpasses that of a Core 2 Duo. No one else is talking about this when it comes to running RimWorld, but we are on this channel. So despite the fact that we are only running at 2 GHz, it meant that we could actually handle the game with a few pawns active and could actually go and raid a base, very poorly keep in mind, and the game didn't slow down to a complete slug of itself like it used to. At the end of the day, RimWorld is a great game, but you could probably get away playing through this as long as you were sticking to smaller colonies and smaller maps. So I'm going to call that a great success because this is a great game you can get hours out of, and at the end of the day, playable on the £10 PC. Now, Minecraft, we were able to run it somewhat okay on the original setup. Admittedly, it was Tekkit Classic, running with all of Optifine's optimizations, and, well, it ran between 20 and 30 FPS. The good news is we can now run the latest and greatest version of Minecraft as long as we're running with fast settings and the 2-chunk render distance. This was all in a 1080p resolution, but when it comes to the 2-chunk render distance, maybe it's the area we spawned in a jungle, it was just so intensive turning up anywhere past 2 that you would get a high frame rate, but the 1% lows would make the game completely unplayable. So yes, it was a bit difficult to see what you were doing through the immense amount of fog, and the frame rate would increase when you did move out of the jungle, which was nice to see, but at the end of the day, the Core 2 quad was struggling quite a lot with this because it's got the limited clock speed, and honestly, I mean, Radeon's OpenGL support is okay at best on these older cards, so trying to cram that mediocre support through a PCI Express 1.1 bus, probably not what Mojang were thinking. But finally, it's a £10 gaming PC. Can it run Crysis? Well, I've never tried to run Crysis through a PCI Express 1.1 bus before. If I have, it must be absolutely years ago. But here, it struggled. We probably should have dropped settings, but I did try dropping settings mid-benchmark and it made no difference to the frame rate whatsoever. But high settings with DirectX 10, something brand new RTX cards can't do, by the way. They can't launch Crysis in DirectX 10, our £10 gaming PC can. Who are the real gamers here? Not the RTX people, it's people using this. At the end of the day, we saw 28 FPS on average, 1% lows down to 21 FPS, and a frame rate that would stabilise after around 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay. I have no clue why it would take this long, but eventually the frame rate would improve. Then you could go back to the busier areas and enjoy it with a bit more of a smoother frame rate that resembles a game rather than a slideshow. So Crysis, it looked alright. Whether or not you call it playable, that's up to you. I mean, it was controllable, so I'm going to go with yes. Yes, the system can run Crysis with high settings and DirectX 10 enabled. So, Jess, what are my thoughts on the system and its overall performance for such a gaming beast? Well, there were definitely some standouts. I mean, Half-Life 2 is probably a good one to start with because we went from being, well, unable to run the current Steam version of the game to being able to run it at a full HD 1080p 60 FPS experience with only a few frame drops here or there. I mean, it's a shame to see that GTA 5 is... I mean, I don't really know what to blame it on here because we have run it on worse hardware than this in the past, so the game has got a little bit more difficult to run, operating systems have got heavier, but honestly I think our main issue here was, well, PCI Express 1.1. The graphics card was pretty much going between no utilization to full utilization because it was just trying to cram a ton of data through a PCI-E lane that it couldn't. So it was a shame there, but I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose it was controllable, and if controllable means playable to you, then I suppose you could call it playable. I think the real standout for me, though, was Bannerlord. I mean, I know I keep going on about how Bannerlord is pretty much the pinnacle of modern game optimization, but it ran fine. Now, yes, we did have to cap frame rates here or there to get a playable frame rate in most games, but BeamNG was playable with a capped frame rate, Bannerlord was playable with a capped frame rate, Half-Life 2 was playable with a capped frame rate. I mean, I don't think we really need to cap the frame rate in Counter-Strike Source because we are well into the hundreds of frames per second, but at the end of the day, I mean, even take a title like Minecraft. It can play Minecraft, which for £10, I mean, I'm sure someone would be happy with that. Yes, you do have to drop the game to its fast settings and then drop the render distance further, but hey, we said we're going to build a £10 gaming PC, and we have built and used a £10 gaming PC, and RimWorld was playable on it, and that's a great game. What else is there to really say about the system though? General day-to-day usage and media playback does work absolutely fine. It does have AMD VCE, so technically you could use this for streaming. It'll have questionable quality in places, but it can do it on the graphics card. So for media encoding, media decoding, it can do it with assistance from the graphics card. I have no idea how that would actually work given the PCI Express limitations. What else can the system do? Browse the web fine? It can make lots of noise. I mean, if we want to discuss power consumption and thermals, the power supply in the system, it can do up to 300 watts, 275 watts continuous. So I have no idea what kind of hardware you could squeeze in here, but you do actually have some degree of headroom on the power supply. Just, I don't know what you would actually want to run on it. At the end of the day, it did most things fine. Thermals weren't a problem. The graphics card topped out in the mid-70s because it was so limited, so rather than hitting 90 degrees, it was in the mid-70s. The processor was bang on about 52 to 55, even under load, because the fans were always running at 100%. But yeah, it worked okay. Windows 11 worked okay. I mean, the system is a nightmare, but it's a gaming PC, and it did what we asked it to do. It can run games, and it can run them, you know what, pretty well actually. So there we have it, the Budget Builds Christmas special to round off the year. And I hope everyone's had a good year. We've definitely made quite a few good videos this year, and I'm glad we could finish it on one that, people really wanted to see. There's lots of demand often for me to upgrade PCs, change operating systems, give them another revisit, but the amount of people that were begging to see this system turned into a gaming machine, whether it was out of nostalgia of the era where that happened, or something else, I just don't know. But at the end of the day, we've gone and done it. So, yes, we've sort of learnt something. We've learnt that the Core 2 Quad can run Windows 11, and it runs it okay. We've learnt that you probably shouldn't buy sketchy SSDs that lose data constantly every time you boot them up. I mean, it didn't corrupt the operating system, but it nearly did a couple of times. And you also probably shouldn't use a Dell Optiplex 330 as the base of a modern gaming PC in 2025. And in fact, going into 2026, we might have to do another revisit into LGA 775 in general, because, I mean, these Core 2 Quads, I mean, the legendary Q6600 was £1, the Q9300 in this was £1, I mean, even that high-clocked Core 2 Duo was 20 pence. They are really worthless, and if PC part prices keep going the way they're going, it pains me to say, and I don't think it will happen, that LGA 775 will have a resurgence, because I think we're too far gone past that. But at the end of the day, it's worth seeing how useful it is. So maybe if we took a look at this system without the limitations, it could also be interesting. Maybe some people will just want me to throw Linux onto this PC and see if Linux can run better on a £10 gaming PC. I guarantee you that's what people will be saying. Maybe we will revisit this once more and we will put Bazite or something on it. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. This is probably going to be the last video of the year. It's been a lot of work, but I've had a lot of fun making videos this year, so thank you all very much for watching, thank you for all sticking around, and I hope to catch you all in the next year. So thank you all, and Merry Christmas.